About 100 videos or something?
About 180.
180?
Yeah, by the looks of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'll just...
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay. Well, and I'll be asked to talk about MOOCs, which we all know stand for Massively Online Open Courses. And I'll give a bit of a critic's guide to them because, let's just get my presentation started here, pardon me. If they're what the future of universities is, then I pretty much want the past, because just looking at my own university experience, I, for a start, paid no fees, which meant that I didn't have to worry about having a part-time job to pay for them either, and if I'd actually attend classes and listen and interact. My university life was back in the early 70s, and it was incredibly lively. It was a mind-blowing experience going from school to university for me. I had great lecturers who were very inspirational and some lousy ones that I reacted to in various ways. Extremely strong interaction with other students. You got to know people very, very deeply. You'd find yourself having intense discussions on university lawns. We even ran our own seminars outside the university. A crazy anarchist friend of mine put on a seminar on philosophy and economics once every 10 days at his house. We all went there for about 2 or 3 years. We even caused a revolt over the teaching of economics because that's been my defining part of my life ever since, I suppose. And I tried doing that in a MOOC. Yeah? That sort of intense personal and intellectual side of the university is not something you can get by being online, even though online adds many other potential forms for discussion. It just doesn't lead to that level of activity. And I think there's also been a false belief by university administrators, I'm pleased to see so many of here today, that MOOCs are cheaper to run than straight academics, which is nonsense. Because if you work in computer programming at all, you know how much effort it takes to get somebody to code what is needed to replace what a human being does automatically. And way back when I first turned up at universities, the jargon term that I found was called alternative modes of delivery. And you see it being spouted by people who'd rarely given a lecture themselves in their lives, certainly rarely gave them once people stayed awake during, and fantasising about how it would cost less money and they could therefore have more black on their bottom line. Well, I'm sorry, if they did it properly, it would double or treble the cost of university, certainly in terms of bringing it in for the first time around. But I think they are useful for letting good academics reach a wider audience, and they're easy to do pretty cheaply, which is what I do. So, in fact, I'm recording what I'm doing right now. It'll be able to go up one of my, so maybe 181st lecture. So my presence is really a side effect of starting a blog over the financial crisis. I began writing emails about that first of all. He's sending out an email newsletter back in, I think, March of 2006. And I then turned it into a blog at somebody's recommendation in 2007. And then as part of that, I established a YouTube channel that I call Prof. Steve Keen, which so far has about 350,000 views and about 3,000 subscribers on it. And so that means an average of about 2,000 views per video, given how many I've got up there. But the range is between as few as 200, as many as 20,000. It's pretty much a parallel distribution of viewing. So that's what the website, the YouTube looks like. I must say, YouTube has done a very nice job of making this very usable. It's much improved over time. Everything that Microsoft ever does seems to make their software harder to use. YouTube got a bit more difficult for a while there, but now it's actually very straightforward to control, making up playlists, putting videos there in the first place, annotating and so on. It's very, very good software. So in addition to YouTube, what I use is PowerPoint, but I use PowerPoint with animations. You can see the fact in the way I'm giving this presentation itself. The Snip tool in Windows, which is a free system. There's a similar thing in Mac, I'm sure. And screen recording software that lets me capture what I'm putting up on screen, either with that's full screen or a window. And I use a package from a company, an English company called Blueberry Software, called Flashback, which, to bring it up over here on screen, that's the company website there. They have a free version, but I use it so much I thought, I've got to financially support them for what they're doing, so I pay for the professional version. And then I have my own custom-made simulation program, which I'll talk about a bit at the end, that I call Minsky. And I didn't apply an animation to that particular. That was accidental, but that makes the point. I found putting a whole dump of text on screen at one time makes it hard for people to absorb, no matter who they are, academics or students or whatever else. So what I prefer to do is to have the animation turning up one line at a time. And again, coming from the top of the screen down rather than sideways. There's a few stylistic things I've come to decide in terms of how well they work in people's capacity to learn how to run a software package. So first of all, notice that animation too. That's also not what I'd prefer to do, animating from the bottom up. That's stupid. It's also the default in Microsoft Office. If I actually bring a new object in here, let's say I bring in a shape, say like I bring in the smiley shape and I whack the smiley shape there, and I then choose animation and say wipe it, it wipes it from the bottom up. What moron chose that, and what moron reproduces that in it's the least likely way you're going to animate something for wiping. You're normally going to wipe from the side or from the top. So what you've got to do, unfortunately, is go through and force all these changes on top of what Microsoft makes as defaults. Did you ever see that? I've forgotten, I can't find it in recent times looking on the web, but there's a wonderful satire about Microsoft option boxes. You've seen the options in Microsoft software, and it said, would you like Microsoft to crash once every hour, 2, only during crucial meetings, etc., etc. Always the wrong defaults. Anyway, having done that, let's just go back and get the animation running again. So you've got to open the master view, which is there, and there's the slide master in this ribbon thing. And that then lets you get a view like so on the text, get rid of the smiley face. So, for example, there's a whole lot of different master slides with any particular PowerPoint slide. This is the one for inserting a table, and I used to use Comic Sans, and people finally convinced me to stop using Comic Sans. So to change it, you simply go back and treat the master slide as if you're working with a design slide, and I then change that to Kandara, that I find a more attractive, while still in formal looking font. The same for the table there as well. And then when I look at the view the master slide behind that, I find that's still got Comic Sans in it. Let's see, there we go. So again, go back and change that to Kandara. And then with the animation, I make sure that it animates each line individually. Now the default is to animate the whole thing as a block, which again is the wrong thing. So you've got to override the defaults that Microsoft has in the program. But once you've done that, it then means that you have a fairly easy way to read the system. Then I add highlights, like for example a little drop-down box at sometimes, but don't overdo it. I've seen people put so much visual stuff that students spend all their time being distracted by it rather than learning. So it's hard work in some ways, but once you've done it, it's worth it. So you can do something like this and say, okay, here's the process of integrating, a function, and talk it through step by step rather than bang, the whole thing turns up on screen in one go. That, by the way, that's the default. What I should do, what I have to do once I put a thing like that in there is come back over here, click on the damn thing, choose the animation pane, come over here. Microsoft tries that the more mouse clicks something takes to do, the better. Make it by 5th level paragraphs, and then it turns up the way I want it to. So, back to that point. Animations make it easy to use PowerPoint. It's a better learning experience. And it's relatively easy to do, but you've got to put a lot of effort in the first time round because of overriding all those defaults that you can't actually change. And it also tends to remove useful features. So one animation I used to use a lot of was stretching an arrow rather than wiping it. That's disappeared. God knows why. They decided after 2003 you didn't need it. Screw you, I want it back. You can't get the stuff back from Microsoft. And like the effing ribbon, I mean, I hate the damn thing. It takes me, what used to take me 30 seconds to find in the menu system, now takes 5 to 10 minutes in the ribbon. So for example, on that front, if I want to animate something, animate an object, then I've got to go to the home key, and the home note's under insert, that's right, and that's where you can tell that you want to activate the contents of something. It's just absolutely non-transparent. Very, very annoying. So back to this point. The Snip is, again, a pretty useful little tool. You can it's called Snip, just type Snip at the command line window, it'll come up. And then you can cut a rectangular or you know, your own shape, if you like, from something you've got on screen, and then impose it in the system. Now again, this is default. When you put a text box in there, it's not animated. Again, I should have animated that. I'll do that now. So let's say animation, wipe. Notice from the bottom up and all at once. That's bloody useful for text. So you come over here and you say, no, I don't want it from the bottom up, I want it from the top down. And I don't want the whole lot of one up, I want to make it, say, by the 4th level paragraphs. And now I've got to move it to where I want it to be in the window, which is after the picture. So having done that, now I've got the slide the way I want it to be. So there's many software packages out there for screen recording. The one I first became aware of is called Flashback. It's made by an English company. I still think it's probably the best. I've used a few of the others and I always come back to Flashback. Very nice package. As you can see, I'm recording the full screen right now using the microphone to record sound, and you can record your video output as well. So I've got and I think that's important to have yourself imposed on the visual, because otherwise it's totally anonymous. So I didn't used to do that, but I now do, and I'll show you the final stage of what's going on there. So I'm recording the full screen. I can put a window or a region as well if I want to for illustrating a software package or that sort of thing. The voice and the video is there at once, and you then save it into a player where you can embellish it, and I'll show you that in a moment, and export it out to a MOOC file or a Flash file, embed that in the PowerPoint, and then when you run it, this is what people see happening. So they actually see the keystrokes that are involved. And what I'm doing here is building a little model in Minsky, but I'm working in text to say what I'm doing at the time and little reminders. So that again is very simple to do with this software. That one come down, let's see. Yeah, okay. Well, that's the sort of story there. And one more tool, which is a software package that I designed but I did not program. There's no way that most academics are programmers. So this is so far cost, that's where the software can be downloaded from. I'll bring up the SourceForge page there as well. So if anyone wants to download a copy of the software, they can get it here for free. There's about 2,000 hours of programming inside that, which roughly means $200,000 of development time. Now with this additional tool, I can do a lot of things that I couldn't do formerly, which involves animating dynamic systems. So I've got a model there of what's called a double pendulum, and I can then, while giving the talk, as well as just showing a movie of it there, which I'm doing right now, I can actually activate that from inside PowerPoint, bring it up, and then simulate it, and then I can also change parameters as I run the simulation and talk about the impact that that has, etc., etc. That sort of thing. So again, that helps. And of course, when I save that on the website, then that's what people see as well. And you can then have them download the technology, and they can then they learn from the software itself as well as the video recording. Another one, there we go, reverse direction. We're adding the possibility in Minsky itself to record not just running a simulation, but designing a simulation. And that is a teaching tool. Means you can say, okay, here's a model, now run how we designed it to see how it's built, now you go and make your own. So that's a particular part that I hope will improve it as a teaching tool. It doesn't work right now, it gets all sorts of bugs when I try to use it, but the use will be twofold. One is for pedagogy, people can see how I actually built a model, but another one which makes this rather useful is that you can use it for assessment as well, because one of the great problems you have, particularly with modern students where they're all part-time, all doing a part-time job somewhere, university comes second, collaboration, and I've even seen advertised outside the University of Toronto on a billboard for weeks. I saw this sign about how you can go and pay for your PhD to be written by people with PhDs. Bloody disgusting. Well, in assessment, if you gave people an assignment and said 500 people in class, I want you all to build a model of this particular phenomenon, here's the model. If they then submitted it to you, you could run the recording of them saving it, and any difference whatsoever has to turn up. The recording, how long they move their hand from one icon to another, everything else is recorded. So there's no possibility of two students submitting each other's work. A copy is, even impartially doing the same thing is going to be obvious in the recording code. So that'll make it a useful teaching tool as well. So my bottom line on MOOCs is they're somewhat overhyped, like so many previous management fads. As I mentioned when I first turned up at universities, this was the one that my particular university administrator was wanking on about at the time, alternative modes of delivery. He had no idea. But otherwise, having said the vast hype, it is easy to add MOOC, a form of MOOC to your online presence using pretty easy software for the academic to run themselves, but it's extremely difficult and extremely expensive to automate completely, and it should be an adjunct to the core experience of university, not a replacement. And I want to see academics in control of that, because having spent 40 years in the academic sector and now being squeezed out at the end by my university making about 10% of its staff redundant, starting 2 weeks before the final exams of last year, I don't want to see MOOCs as yet another way that administrators try to take over a university, because if they do, they do little things like this. Sack 10% of your staff and give all the new students iPads. Out with the old, in with the new. And I really don't believe the administrator who thought up that advertising slogan had any idea of the irony involved in combining those two activities with less than a month between the two of them. My little finding note on that about universities is sometimes it's depressing to work here, but it's because we're designed by assholes in management, not because we're bad people ourselves. Okay, thank you.
Steve, before you take questions,
Yeah?
can you just show us some snippets of stuff you have put on YouTube?
Yeah, sure.
So how it looks when you talk.
Okay. Well, here's my YouTube channel, and the main thing I make use of a playlist now, because you can put a whole set of lectures together, and somebody can actually choose just to watch it. They click from a user view. Let's see if I can go across to seeing it from the user's point of view. Let's see what I get here. It looks like I can't from this particular... Oh, view as public. There we go. So somebody comes in, if they choose playlists, then they might go to this one, and then they can watch, say, this lecture to begin with. So this has had about 1,000 views in 2 weeks. So YouTube makes their money out of it by advertising. By YouTube. That may be about 0.01 microcents, I think. Okay. And then, let's see, are we running? We'll go back a bit here. Okay. I know, I must have been. Let's see. Is it working? No. Come on. Maybe I better do a great demo. I'll choose another one. Hang on.
Yes. Well, that's and that would be on the bottom, so I'll have it down here instead. What I'd have there for it would be this would be now demanded. That's the amount juice the stocks would run down. Now it's a possibility. We've done that many stocks. We've had short stock. So then another problem we have to bring inside there. Back orders. So I need to generalize that way and say changing supply lines from now to changing stock, plus changing back orders, for example. So those we need to generalise the simple version I'll put down there. That's the statement in general.
So that's what people would actually listen to through the headphones, I prefer, to see the whole lecture. But let's just see like I've got 10 lectures there, the last of which is now to about 400 views or so. So.
Do you have one where you are sort of sitting in front of your computer and talking in the corner and...
Let's see.
Because the sound is a bit...
yeah, let's see. That's pretty bad.
That was from a question session or something?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, let's go for this one here. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
There is one thing that we can't fix with the new system, and that is person talking too fast.
Yes, I always talk to. You actually can slow it down if you really want to be. I haven't tried doing that yet, but yeah, with the recording, I think within Blueberry, I haven't actually checked it, but a lot of software packages you can actually slow it down from say 90% of speed, and then it makes the video frames run at the same speed. Have you tried doing that? Like I had a hit of helium. Yeah. Yeah.
But essentially, what you do here is you use what do you call the program?
Blueberry Flashback.
And you use that to put your own commentary in afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. So I'll bring up Blueberry right now because I'm running it at the moment. Let's just bring up its previous window here. So as I'm working on it, for example, I can say I want to insert like an arrow. Let's see. And display it for some length of time. So you just go, bang, put it there. And then that will then, when you run the video, that'll be inserted there. You can also put text in or words at some point. So it's quite a nice... I've used a few editing suites, and I must say this is one of the nicest that I've seen. Very cleanly designed, and no toolbar, no stupid ribbon. It's just very well menu-driven software package, well thought out. And you can whack in video from somewhere else inside it. You can combine various videos together and so on. So quite a nice piece of software.
Yeah, I mean, we are so few here, so people can just talk with you now.
Yeah.